And we get asked a lot of times, what's the difference between buck bedding and doe bedding? And I guess one of the biggest things that you can look for is that does bed in a group. And that's not always like the one thing you can look for, because sometimes the bucks will have multiple beds in an area. But just for example, if you look right here, we've got one bed here, we've got one bed there, we've got a bigger bed back there. But to me, this is doe bedding because I can see a bed there, you can see two beds right here. So it's just a little doe group that I think is bedding right off the edge of this field here. So just one thing you can look for when you're looking to try to decide the difference between buck bedding and doe bedding. To me, with these beds here, these are doe beds. And another thing that tells me it's probably doe bedding and not buck bedding is how close it is to the edge of this field. For the most part, a buck's not going to bed this close to the edge of a field, especially here on public land where there's people hunting all the way around this edge. So just kind of where it's located can also tell you if it's buck bedding over doe bedding. But right in here, there's a couple of those beds that I just showed you right back there, and it's so close here to the field. To me, this is doe bedding in these beds that we're seeing right here. When we talk about buck beds, a lot of times we're talking about trying to find some type of transition or like a rise in the ground. And this is a good example right here. It's probably gonna be hard to tell in the camera, but there's a lip right here and it goes down where you can see that trail running right there. So it comes up right here, and right where it comes up, right on the edge, you've got a bunch of beds in here where the does, I think these are doe beds just because of how many there are, but there's beds right here, right off the edge of this lip right here. So even in farm country and river bottom ground like this, where it's really, really flat, this probably 3 to 4 foot rise is all the deer need, and they'll bed right off the rise so that they can see back that way. So the river's back there, this rise comes up, and then they can sit right here, face that way, and see anything coming. So just a 3 foot rise here in farmland and river bottom ground is all you need for those deer to bed off of it. This right here, doe bedding, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4 smaller beds that are in here, and you can see that they're kind of in a circle here, which makes sense because does will bed in groups like that, and they'll all kind of face a different direction so they can see things coming. So it's not so much wind-based bedding for does like it is for bucks. You can see here, for just bedding in that circle, they can all face a different direction and see stuff coming. It only rose up probably 2 feet, but it's a slight rise. They can look out over the river, see people coming from that way, and see anything coming back through those woods, even though they probably don't really expect any pressure coming from back there. But bedded in a circle like that, they can look all around them. So typical doe bedding, that's one thing to look for when you're finding beds. You know the difference between buck bedding and doe bedding. Does kind of bed in a circle like this.
One of the things that I think is just so easy to forget when you're looking at beds, when you see rubs in them, don't necessarily take that for it's always a buck bedding there. Like the last deer to come through here was definitely a doe, just based off the tracks. And it's I think there's just so many people that get so locked on buck bed. I mean, yeah, a buck uses it. You're just trying to put yourself in a position where, the buck feels comfortable the most often. Doesn't mean that a buck's always going to be here today, but obviously an old rub like that tells you for, at least the last 5 years, deer have probably been bedding in there.
Yep.
Bucks.
So like Zach was mentioning, does will use buck beds too. I was hunting on a different spot of this property here during the late season over those buck beds where I bumped that buck, and a doe came in and bedded right in where I know that buck was bedded. So not always is a buck bed just a buck bed where only bucks are going to bed. Does will use buck beds too, but like Zach said, you're just trying to put yourself in an area where that buck feels most comfortable and in a spot where the buck is going to bed. Doesn't mean he's going to come right back to that bed, and doesn't mean you're just going to see him coming through there. But you're just trying to up the odds of being in a spot where that buck's going to be. So when we look at the main differences between buck and doe bedding, one of them is does are going to bed most likely in a circle. They're going to be in a doe group, have a bunch of other does with them watching every direction, where most likely a buck is going to bed by himself, kind of wind specific. You can also tell a little bit about if it's buck bedding or doe bedding based on where it's bedded at, the location of the bed. So like I mentioned earlier, those beds are closer to the field, there's a lot of pressure, most likely that's going to be doe bedding. Bucks are going to bed somewhere where they have everything they need. They got water, they got cover, and they've got some type of feature that allows them to get an advantage over us as hunters and predators. So those are the main things that you can look for when you're looking for the difference between buck bedding and doe bedding. So thanks for watching this video. If you haven't already, hit that like button down below and subscribe if you haven't. Thanks for watching.